1, go.
Hello everybody, to another Facebook Live here at the aquarium. My name is Nick. I'm here with my friend Bill. Hey Bill.
Hi Nick. Hi everybody. How you doing?
Doing pretty good. Bill, tell the people what you do here at the aquarium.
I am the senior aquarist in charge of the Northern Waters Gallery. So I take care of a lot of different animals such as colored lobsters, giant Pacific octopus, flounder, cod, a whole bunch of stuff.
Okay. So I thought today might be a good day to pick Bill's brain about one of the animals he just mentioned and that you can see represented in front of you as well, lobsters. American lobsters are one of those animals here at the aquarium that's pretty well known and easy to recognize. We're very familiar with them here in New England for a lot of reasons. People do like to eat lobsters. Bill, do you eat lobsters?
From time to time.
Yep.
If I have lobster, I come in the next day, they'll look at me funny. So I try not to eat them too often.
I can understand that. I also have lobster from time to time. The sustainability of the lobster fishery is being examined right now, but historically it has been a sustainable fishery. A lot of people ask us about whether any of the animals that are here at the aquarium, we always consider things like sustainability and the fishery status of that animal before we make those choices, but we're not all against eating things that come from the ocean. There are lots of good choices when it comes to seafood. But enough of that. Let's talk about what we came here to talk about, lobsters. Does that sound good?
Sounds good.
Okay, here we go. So, Lobster 101 to start with. Lobsters are a crustacean. Some of the characteristics of crustaceans are that they have a hard exoskeleton, and I have the example of a lobster molt here. This is basically the outer layer of the lobster. You could call it their skin, but it's actually an exoskeleton, an external skeleton. It's made of hard material, minerals, things like chitin and other things that the lobster acquires from living in the ocean to build its shell. Another characteristic of crustaceans, and you guys should be keeping an eye on Bill because if I'm getting any of these things wrong, he's just going to shake his head like this. They also have jointed appendages. Joints being things like our knuckles and our elbows and our knees. They also have bent appendages too that allow them to bend and move parts of their body in different ways. Lobsters also have these two really big claws, and if you look really closely at a lobster's claws, you can actually notice that they're different. One claw is larger than the other one. Bill, what do we usually call the different claws? Is there like a name for each one?
Yeah, usually we call the bigger claw the crusher, and the smaller claw, or more of a kind of elongated claw, either the scissor claw or the cutter. And they're used for different purposes too. Each claw is designed that way for a different purpose in mind. The crusher claw, when they get food, either mussels or crabs, will take that and they'll use the big crusher to kind of crush it down and break the shell apart. The cutter claw is much faster, so they can kind of grab things out of the water column like a fish or a squid or a shrimp or something that's swimming by. So it's got much different use than the other one.
That makes sense, yeah. Kind of like having like a jackknife on one hand and like a fork or a knife on the other or something like that, right? Like kind of like tools a little bit, right?
Pretty much.
Yeah, okay. Very cool. All right, now another thing about lobsters, American lobsters that is that they tend to prefer colder water, but I think you can see them up and down the Atlantic coast. Is that right? Do they live down towards like as far down as the Carolinas? Maybe?
They do have a range, yeah. You can see them down close to Maryland, farther south, but you also see them all the way up to Maine and Nova Scotia. They kind of prefer more of the colder water, but you'll see them even in the summertime here when the water in the harbor gets up to like 70s. You'll still see them here.
Okay, interesting. So talking about cold water, that must be one of the important things to you caring for lobsters here at the aquarium, is keeping them in colder water.
It is. We work very hard to maintain cold water in this entire gallery here. The water here maintains between 48 and 52 degrees most of the year. Even in the summertime when it's like 90 degrees outside, it's nice and cool in here. It's good for us, but it's also better for the animals. Interesting. Yeah. We try and work really hard at keeping that way. So we have chillers or units or our life support designed to kind of help keep our water cold.
That makes sense. If you live in cold water, you want to be comfortable and stay in cold water, right? That's important. Are there any other things about setting up a tank for a lobster that are important in terms of their habitat?
We try to give them each like a home or a little place, a little cubby. Lobsters in the wild either live in dens inside the rockwork or they dig holes in the sand. They kind of get pits so they can kind of get their own little home and safety spot. So we try to give that here as well. When we do it on exhibit, we build boulders that create crevices or natural like indents and homes for them. So lobsters have their choice of where they want to go, and also kind of give them that sense of safety. Even in holding here, we have PVC pipes or terracotta pots, whatever we can find to kind of help create that little home for them to make them feel safe and a little more natural habitat.
There you go. And yeah, Bill just referenced that we're actually standing right in front of a holding area here where we have a bunch of lobsters. We took one lobster out that you guys are going to get a closer look at in a little bit. Bill, these lobsters actually have a special purpose here at the aquarium, right? Can you talk about what we use these lobsters for?
All these lobsters here are all colored lobsters. They're all genetically colored lobsters. And we use these for our live animal presentations. When the public comes to the aquarium, our educators will come and take a lobster out and move it over to the public side, so that way the public can get up close, they can see it, and the educators will talk to them about it. So it's a nice way for the public to get up close to these lobsters and learn a little more about them.
There you go. Very cool. All right, we'll take another close look at the lobster in a second here. But let's talk more about what you need to do to care for these animals. You mentioned some of the things that they might use their claws to feed on in the wild. Shellfish, maybe fish if they can catch them, or squid. Is that the type of stuff that you feed them here as well? We
do. We try to give them a variety of diet, which also might mimic or help mimic their natural behavior, natural diet as well. These guys are also scavengers. They're crawling across the bottom. They come across something dead on the ground or whatever. They'll go for it and they'll eat it. But here we try and give them fish, shrimp, mussels. If we have it, we even have like crabs. Out in the harbor we have green crabs, which are an invasive species here in New England, so we love feeding them that straight from the harbor to kind of help with that. Yeah. But it's a good source of nutrients too, a little more natural diet for them from the wild.
There you go.
And we try to feed it to them regularly, so that way they have a nice natural variety.
Very cool. So yeah, they have an important role in the food web. Then the scavengers, they're cleaning up both live but also dead materials on the bottom, preventing them from decomposing and growing toxic bacteria and algae and things like that. I know a lot of animals are scavengers, right, and sort of fill that role in the food web, and they're a great example of that. Yeah.
They are. They're very good scavengers, which is also part of the problem. That's how lobstermen catch them. They throw the bait ball, lobsters get drawn to the smell, they go rock right in the trap, and go trap that bait, and it's an easy thing for them. But they are great scavengers at the bottom. They're constantly picking stuff up.
Very cool. Right on. Okay. So we've given you a little bit of the basics of lobsters here. Talked a little bit about some of the things that Bill thinks about when he's caring for these animals. We thought it would be kind of cool to hit on lobster color a little bit. Bill was just mentioning how the lobsters that we have here are all sort of unique colors. When we think about lobsters, a lot of the time in our mind we're associating them with the color red. That's because they've typically just been cooked. The natural color of a lobster, would you say, Bill, is more kind of like a brownish, greenish color?
Yeah, brown, green, a little bit of red, but mostly like a brownish color, yes.
Okay. But as you may have noticed on the camera here, or on your video, and as we're zooming in to look at right now, this is one example of unique colorations that lobsters can exhibit. This is a blue lobster. We also have some calico lobsters, some orange lobsters, some other really unique colors as well. If you've been here to the aquarium before and seen lobsters in some of Bill's exhibits, they've often been sort of uniquely colored as well. Bill, we know a little bit about lobster coloration. I think between the two of us, we're going to try to do our best to explain how this all works. I'll start, and then you can correct me. Does that sound like a good idea?
Sounds like good. I'll let you go first.
Okay, there we go. So, basically, a lobster has 3 layers to its exoskeleton, or shell. Now, in a lobster's diet, they absorb this substance that's called astaxanthin. Astaxanthin is a chemical, it's a protein that they ingest, and it sort of gets restricted in those different layers of shell. But the thing is, when it goes into each layer of shell, and again there are 3 layers, it binds and it changes the way that its color is expressed. So far I think I'm doing okay.
You're doing great, yes.
Okay, let's go, here we go. Hopefully some of you guys will help to correct me too if I get anything wrong here. But anyway, as it enters the bottom layer of the lobster's shell, it is essentially expressed as its natural color, which is red. But then, as the protein astaxanthin goes up into the next layer of shell, it binds and sort of twists and changes at the molecular level and becomes expressed as blue. But that's not the only thing, or that's not the last part of it. Then when the astaxanthin enters the last layer, the top layer of the exoskeleton, it gets expressed as yellow. When you put all of those colors together, then when you look at a lobster, what you're seeing is that combination, that mottled green, brown, which is actually a combination of all those colors together.
Yes.
Bill's not, you guys can't see, but Bill's not.
I give him a thumb. That's a good explanation. I like that.
I feel like that's pretty accurate. We'll go to the Google to make sure that we got all those details right. But that's basically the way that it works. I suppose another way to think about it is this: if, for instance, a lobster had like 3 layers of tissue paper on top of its body, and each of those layers of tissue paper was a different color, and then all together they would produce, to our vision, sort of a mottled coloration. Now, it doesn't always happen this way. Sometimes things happen with the lobster that change the way that its color is expressed. As you guys have been seeing, we've got a blue lobster here in our holding pen. Now, what might change the color of a lobster, to my knowledge, and again, Bill can help me out with this one, are 2 things. Number one, the diet of the lobster. If it's not eating enough of that astaxanthin or getting enough of that in its diet, or if it has some sort of genetic mutation that doesn't allow all the colors to be expressed in a particular way. Now, coming upon a blue lobster like this, it's pretty rare, right, Bill?
It is very rare. It's they estimate about 1 in 2 million for each lobster that's blue, and it varies between different colors. But this is about 1 in 2 million, which is still a very rare find and great for us to have here.
Very cool. And yeah, actually, that's a good point. So maybe, Bill, you can tell us a little bit more about how are we getting all these uniquely colored lobsters? I mean, if they're so rare and we have so many here at the aquarium, what's going on there?
What's great about us is the fact that we have such a large community around us, and we are in New England, and the lobstering community here is just huge. It's great, and they're always very supportive of the aquarium. All these lobsters here have been donated to us from lobstermen or lobster pounds or grocery stores. Price Chopper, Stop and Shop, Roach Brothers, all those places have given us a call. A lot of families that own the fishing boats or the lobster pounds always call when they get a colored lobster, which has been huge. So everything's been donated by families and people around New England.
That's really cool. Yeah. So again, that's what's given us all these different colors. And we have probably a lot of different interesting stories related to lobsters being donated. I know that you haven't been here at the aquarium for every lobster that's been donated, but among the ones that you've experienced, I wonder if you have like a favorite story or two.
There's been a couple. I love when I talk to the lobstermen and the families, because they put such joy and happiness into it.
Yeah.
They're so excited, because a lot of times, because it is so rare, a lobsterman can be doing this for 30 years, and this can be the first time he's caught a blue lobster or an orange lobster, and it's great for them, and they get so excited for it, and I love seeing that. So a lot of times they name them either after family members or after Simpsons episodes, which has been a good one. We have Pinchy, which is our Halloween lobster, which is a molt right here. Pinchy was donated by a family up in Salem. They called me up and wanted to donate it, and I picked it up actually the day before Halloween. So we got it from Salem around Halloween, and that's how it became a Halloween lobster.
That's really cool.
And
just to be clear, again, this is just the molt of Pinchy. Pinchy still lives here at the aquarium, right?
Yep, Pinchy's still here. She's still actually over in the tide pool, edge of the sea touch tank, so you can still see her. It's been
cool.
Yeah, it's been awesome.
Yeah, so that's really neat. That's great that we have this community of people that are willing to donate lobsters like this, so we get to show them off and help people learn more about them. Super cool. So before we kind of turn over to any questions that you guys might have here, Bill, is there anything else about like caring for lobsters that you think is like really interesting, or a part of it that you really enjoy?
I think what's funny about this is people don't realize the lobsters actually have a lot of personality. I mean, you look at the lobster, it's no big deal, but when we come over to feed these animals, they come right at the tank, they come right at us, they're looking for their food. When we come over the tank, they drop the food in, they know it immediately. So they actually have a lot of personality, which is really kind of odd to think about a bottom-dwelling crustacean walking around the ocean.
Yeah.
But they're quite feisty. They have a lot of emotion, a lot of like angst, just kind of coming at you. They're very like feisty little creatures, which has been kind of a lot of fun. I like it.
That's really cool. Yeah. We could probably talk about lobsters for years and years and years. There's so many interesting things about them. I'll just drop a quick tidbit in there. Lobsters pee out of their head, don't they, Bill?
They do. That is true.
Yeah. I'm just going to leave that one right there. Maybe we'll get some questions about it. We can talk more about it. But I think now's a good time to turn things over to see if any of you guys that are virtually visiting us today have any great questions. How long do lobsters live for? That's a great question, Electra. I know that there's been a lot of research about this, Bill. What do you know about lobster age?
I know it's hard to tell. There's been a lot of research that they can judge that it takes about 7 years to get to be 1.25 pounds, which is legal size. And so people always assume that like 7 years to get 1.25 pounds, so it takes 7 years to get to the next size. But that's not actually true. When a lobster molts, it varies through like season, water temperature, food sources, things like that, so that it doesn't molt consistently throughout its age. And as it gets bigger, it grows more as well. So a lobster that's 20 pounds could be 15 years, it could be 30 years, it could be 40 years.
Yeah.
But you just don't really know because you can't judge them unless it's been in captivity or for that long, and we don't know that.
Yeah.
But I do know that they can live for a very long time.
Interesting. So there you go, Electra. Yeah. Very cool. Any other questions?
How would you like to know what is the largest lobster you've ever had at the aquarium?
Oh, wow. Okay. The largest lobster we've ever had at the aquarium, Bill. What do you think?
Since I've been here, the largest one we've had is 26 pounds. But years ago, in the 80s, we had one that was, I think, 36.
Whoa.
It was a monster.
Yeah.
It was huge.
That's crazy.
We used to have a tank just dedicated to it. It's the one tank to itself, and just a one large lobster.
I wouldn't want to be another animal living in that tank.
No.
A 36-pound lobster.
They had some big claws.
That's crazy. But Bill, you can correct me with this one. I think the largest lobster ever caught was in the like 44-pound range.
Yeah, I believe so.
Yeah.
I believe so.
And I know actually that the Museum of Science has a lobster mold of a lobster that was 42 pounds, which is pretty big too. Pretty amazing. Yeah. Good question. Okay. Any other questions?
Mary would like to know how many babies can they have in pregnancy?
How many babies can lobsters have in a pregnancy? Lobster reproduction is another really interesting facet of their lives. Bill, do you know at all like how many lobster babies can be produced at one time?
A lot.
Okay, a lot. Yeah.
Well, I also know is it varies on size. So because you look at the size of the female, all the eggs are laid on her tail. So the bigger her tail, the more eggs she could have, which is why it's also really important that the masters and state regulations, they can't capture lobsters over a certain size.
Ah.
There's a they have to be bigger than a size, but also smaller in size. So there's a range of lobsters to be collected, harvested.
Yeah.
And so because the bigger females that stay in the population will actually produce more eggs, produce more babies to keep that population going, keep it healthy.
Yeah. And Bill, you can correct me here too. I think part of that regulation is also if you collect a female that has eggs, you have to put a notch in its tail, and then you have to put it back in the ocean, right? You can't keep those lobsters
Correct.
that have eggs.
You don't have to put a notch in the tail. You can't. You're not allowed to collect females that have eggs.
Ah, okay.
Putting a notch in the tail helps because that keeps that notch in there, and the females no longer be collected while it has a notch. So it kind of keeps them around for a couple of molts.
Oh, that's interesting. Okay.
A lot of lobstermen do that just to kind of help the population, keep the females out there, keep them producing eggs,
Yeah.
to kind of help the population because it's their livelihood. So
Yeah.
more lobsters out there, the better it is for them too.
Yeah, that makes sense. And again, Bill can correct me here. I think that let's say a lobster lays 50,000 eggs, 100,000 eggs. There may only be like 4 or 5 of those eggs that result in lobster larvae that grow up to be full adults, right? And that's part of the reason why their strategy is to lay so many eggs, because the odds of reaching full adulthood for a lobster are pretty tough.
Very small, yeah.
Yeah,
That's,
okay.
that's why the thing is you produce a lot of eggs, a lot of young, and that way the percentage is a little higher, but it's still a low percent of what actually survives.
There you go. Great question. Any other good questions? More visitors here?
Isaiah would like to know how
Isaiah would like to know how far lobsters can travel. Interesting. I don't know. What do you think about that one, Bill?
That's a good question. I don't know for sure, but I do know I've heard reports that lobsters migrate. And I've heard them migrate from like deeper waters into shore during the seasons. So, but how far that travel is, I don't know personally.
Yeah.
That's a good question.
It is a good question. I think we've also learned a little bit in this area that lobster populations might possibly, researchers haven't confirmed this yet, but they might possibly be starting to migrate a little bit further north than where they normally spend time. And again, the theory is, this hasn't been proven yet, the theory is it might have something to do with a rise in water temperature in this area that might be driving them to colder waters off the coast of Canada. So, yeah, interesting stuff. All right, any other questions for our visitors?
Paul would like to know what animals can eat lobsters in the ocean.
What animals can eat lobsters in the ocean? Well, I suppose it depends a little bit on the size and how old the lobster is, but Phil, you want to try and take that one?
Yeah, there are actually a lot of animals that do eat lobsters, but generally speaking, it's when just after they've molted, so they're like really defenseless and soft-shelled, so they really can't fend for themselves. But there's animals like ocean pouts, sea ravens, cod, other things like that are the three main ones I can think off the top of my head. Probably cusk. There's probably a bunch of animals out there that will. But yeah, it really depends on like the size of lobster. When you get to like the larger, like 20-pound, 30-pound lobsters, there's probably not much out there that would really ever eat them,
That's the lobster.
except for humans.
Except for humans, that's right. Yeah, absolutely. Okay. I think maybe we got time for another question or two, if there are any more. Yeah.
Penelope would like to know how deep in the water can lobsters go.
That's a good one. Yeah. How deep in the water lobsters can go? Interesting question. Yeah. What do you think about that, Bill?
I think, I don't know exact numbers, but I've heard them down for over 100 feet,
Okay.
which I think is pretty impressive. But that's just what I've heard from reports. I'm sure they can go much deeper.
Yeah, I think I've heard that as well. And again, I think going along with one of the questions we just had about how far they can travel, I think Bill mentioned that sometimes they will move from deeper water to shallower water depending on the season. And the question is, I think, like, to visit those deeper waters is a little bit harder for humans to do. So we might not know exactly how deep a lobster can go, but I think Bill hit it on the head there. At least 100 feet, maybe even deeper than that. Yeah. Okay. Let's have one more question here from our visitors.
Rafina would like to know how painful is a lobster pinch?
Oh man, I'm so glad that I can't answer this question with authority, but I'm wondering if Bill can answer this question.
Yes, I can. Unfortunately, yes. It also depends on how they pinch you and where they pinch you. I've been grabbed by the crusher claw right here and also right here.
Oh,
And it's really bad when they grab, like, the pinch of the skin. That's when it gets really painful and they don't let go. They really kind of grab on and hang on. But it can be pretty painful. I mean, the crusher claw is designed to break up crabs and mussels, so it has to be really strong. So if it got a good grip and it really wanted to, it could probably break a finger and do some damage. But thankfully, I haven't ever had that option or that chance to feel that. So they are very strong and they're quick, very quick.
so maybe it's best not to try it out. Let's just go with that, shall we? Okay, this has been great. You guys have asked a lot of great questions. I want to encourage everyone to continue putting those questions in the comments. We'll do our best to try to answer those following up this presentation. And I want to say thanks to Bill for today.
My pleasure. It's good doing this.
This was great. Great chance to learn a little bit more about lobsters and their coloration. Thank you guys for all coming to visit us today virtually. Please come back and see us again soon. And again, don't forget to put any extra questions if you have in the comments. Have a great day.